This is a compilation of over 1 hour of Elden Ring armor, weapons, and secret items explained, so sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn. Let's kick things off with every armor set in Elden Ring explained. Every armor set in Elden Ring tells a story. Some whisper it through item descriptions nobody reads. Others scream it by literally changing the game's narrative when you pick them up. Today, I'm breaking down every iconic armor set in this game, what it means, and why it matters. Starting with one you can grab before most players even find their first boss. Twinned Set. Here's something most people don't realize. One of the most lore-heavy, story-altering armor sets in the entire game is available within the first 10 to 15 minutes of your playthrough. You just walk east of the Gatefront ruins, find D, Hunter of the Dead, standing near a cemetery, kill him, and it's yours. That's it. No dungeon, no boss gauntlet, no hidden questline to unlock, just a dead man and his armor. But this isn't just early game loot. Read the item description. Not once do they stand together. Not one word do they speak to one another. The Twinned Set depicts two bodies, gold and silver, intertwined. Two brothers sharing one soul who never once spoke to each other. That's not flavor text. That's a tragedy compressed into a single sentence, and it immediately tells you that gear in Elden Ring carries genuine emotional weight. Now here's where it gets interesting. You can alter the set through Bach the Seamster to remove the cape, giving it a cleaner silhouette with adjusted defensive values. Fine, standard stuff, but the real power of this armor has nothing to do with stats. If you take the Twinned Set to Dee's twin brother Devon in Nokron, Eternal City, and hand it to him, the entire FIA questline changes. He disappears from Nokron. He reappears at Fia's location in the Deeproot Depths, and the consequences of that meeting reshape the story in ways no other piece of equipment in the game can claim. Data-mined evidence suggests that after Devon avenges his brother, the sword and armor left behind indicate he dies too. Players still argue about whether giving him the set is the correct lore choice, or just a one-way ticket to a revenge death. There's no clean answer. Stat-wise, let's be honest. The Twinned Set weighs roughly 5 units more than the Knight Set, while offering 1 less poise. It sits below the critical 51 poise PvE breakpoint, so you're not wearing this for optimization. You're wearing it because it means something. And in a game with hundreds of armor sets, that matters more than most players think. But if the Twinned Set is a story told through tragedy, the next set is a story told through loyalty to a queen who lost everything. Carrion Knight Set. Most players sprint through the Academy of Raya Lucaria like it's a race. Get in, kill the boss, move on. But the ones who actually slow down and explore the graveyard area, they get rewarded with one of the cleanest armor sets in the entire game. The Carrion Knight Set is a static pickup found near a shrine in the Academy's graveyard section, guarded by glintstone zombie enemies, and here's the thing, you can grab it before you ever fight Renala. No boss kill required, just curiosity and a willingness to poke around corners most people ignore. But this isn't just nice armor you found in a magic school. The Carrion Knights were enchanted warriors sworn directly to the Carrion royal family. That's the same dynasty that produced Renala, Queen of the Full Moon, and her daughter Rani, who is arguably the most important figure in the game's entire sorcery lineage. Wearing this set means you're repping the same house that shaped the lands between's magical history. That's not nothing. Stat-wise, the full set grants 26 poise, well below the critical 51 poise breakpoint, which drives theory crafters absolutely insane. You're 25 points short of tanking through most standard weapon attacks, and that gap has fueled countless forum threads about whether it's worth mixing in significantly heavier pieces to bridge the difference. It also weighs identically to the base Knight set sold by the Twin Maiden Husks, which means you can swap pieces between sets without burning extra endurance levels. Fashion mixing without punishment. Now, the cape. We need to talk about the cape. It clips through the elbow guards in a way that is genuinely distracting once you notice it. You can take it to Bach the Seamster and have him alter it off, but some players refuse because the blue cloth catches light in a way that looks incredible during sorcery animations. It's a real trade-off between visual polish and pure aesthetic vibes. And speaking of vibes, the community has essentially canonized this set for battle mage builds. The silver sheen pairs naturally with Carrion sorcery effects, and combining the Carrion Knight chest with Bled's gauntlets and greaves has become one of the most endorsed fashion combinations in the entire game. It's not official, it's just correct. But if you think looking good is impressive, wait until you see an armor set that carries the weight of an entire war on its shoulders. Raidehen Set. Radahn is the most hyped demigod in the entire game. He held the stars in place through sheer gravity magic just to stop Ranni's plans. He fought Melania, the Scarlet Rot goddess herself, to a standstill During the shattering, players organize an entire festival just to take him down. He rides a horse that's comically too small for him because he learned gravity magic specifically so he wouldn't crush it. The guy is a legend, so you'd expect his armor to match that energy, right? Here's the thing. The General Radon set is statistically almost identical to the Banished Knight set. The chest piece edges out marginally better overall protection, but we're talking fractions of a percentage point. The Banished Knight set is farmable from random enemies in Stormvale Castle, a location most players clear before they even think about stepping foot in Caelid. So the mightiest living demigod's personal armor barely outperforms gear worn by nameless knights guarding a castle you cleared 30 hours ago. But before you write it off completely, there is one genuine mechanical redemption here. The full Radon set grants 60 poise, which comfortably clears the critical PvE breakpoints that let you trade hits with most enemies without getting staggered out of your attacks. That's not nothing. Most story boss armor sets don't actually reach that level of poise stacking, so Radon's gear at least earns its place in a practical loadout even if the raw defense numbers are underwhelming. Now, the community has floated claims that wearing the full set increases rune farming rewards. Nobody has ever mechanically confirmed this. No data miner has found a hidden modifier. No game file supports it. Consider that one firmly in the sounds cool but probably not real category. And then there's the debate that never dies. Did Radon actually win against Millennia, or did he lose? The fight ended in a draw on the surface, but Millennia inflicted the Scarlet Rot on him, which slowly destroyed his mind and reduced him to a feral beast crawling through the desert eating corpses. Some players call that a loss, with extra steps. Others argue he held his ground and never fell in combat. The Rot just cheated. Years later, this argument still has no resolution, and honestly, it probably never will. Either way, his armor tells a quieter story than his legend does. But if you think Radon's gear has an identity crisis, wait until you see the armor worn by the soldiers who willingly followed Millennia into that Rot. Clean Rot set. If you're looking for the single best armor set in the game for resisting status effects, this is it. The full Clean Rot set carries roughly 150 immunity and 159 robustness, the highest combined total of those two resistances in the entire game. If you're heading anywhere near Scarlet Rot pools or frostbite enemies, this is the practical pick. Full stop. But here's the thing. The stats aren't even the most interesting part of this armor. Not even close. The Clean Rot Knights were Millennia's personal soldiers. They fought beside her, knowing exactly what would happen to them. The Scarlet Rot that consumed Millennia wasn't something they were immune to. There was no cure, no protection, no special enchantment keeping them safe. These knights watched their own flesh deteriorate in real time and kept swinging their swords anyway. They weren't enhanced super soldiers or blessed warriors. They were just completely, devastatingly loyal, and the helmet tells that story better than anything else. It's a winged helm, and those wings aren't just decorative. They mark these knights as Millennia's own, an elite order that chose to identify themselves with their rotting commander even as the same curse ate them alive. Think about that for a second. They were rotting in service to this woman, and they chose to wear her symbol on their heads as a badge of honor. That's not military discipline. That's something closer to worship. Now, actually getting this set is its own form of devotion. You can farm it from Clean Rot Knight enemies in the Shaded Castle and the Halig Tree, but the drop rates are brutal. Players report needing 120 or more kills on average to complete a full set, and the drop rate inconsistency is real. You'll get 3 chest pieces before a single pair of greaves drops. It's the kind of grind that makes you question whether you're doing this for stats or for fashion, and honestly, the answer is probably both. You can alter the set to remove cloth elements from both the helm and chest piece, shaving off some weight at a minor defensive cost. Worth considering if you're tight on equip load. What makes this set genuinely special in the lore is the tension between decay and effectiveness. These knights were falling apart physically, and they never stopped being elite combatants. That contradiction is the entire point. Loyalty so absolute, it overrides self-preservation. No buffs, no divine protection, just commitment that borders on insanity. But if you think devotion to a cursed demigod is dark, wait until you see what the surgeons serving the Lord of Blood were willing to do. War Surgeon set. The White Mask is one of exactly 3 armor pieces in Elden Ring that directly increase your damage output. Put it on, proc blood loss on anything, and you get a flat 10% attack power buff for 20 seconds. Not a minor stat nudge. A genuine timed damage window that turns bleed, builds from strong into absolutely disgusting. But getting it requires one of the most annoying acquisition methods in the game. You need to defeat 3 separate nameless White Mask invaders who spawn in Mogwyn Dynasty Mausoleum's Blood Lake. lake. These aren't just standing around waiting for you. They invade at specific points across the lake, and you need to have either completed White Mask Varay's questline for the Pureblood Knight's medal or reach the consecrated Snowfield Waygate to even access the area. It's a slog through one of the most hostile environments in the game, ankle deep in blood, fighting NPCs that hit like trucks. Here's where it gets worse. If you kill Mog, Lord of Blood, before defeating all 3 invaders, they stop spawning permanently. The set becomes completely unobtainable for that entire playthrough. No workaround, no merchant backup, nothing. Kill the boss too early, and you're locked out until New Game Plus. This is the kind of design choice that makes players furious, because there's zero in-game warning. You walk into Mog's arena thinking you're progressing, and you've just erased an entire armor set from your inventory forever. The War Surgeon gown also drops in its altered form initially, meaning without the cloak attached. This trips up a lot of players who expect a full, unaltered set on pickup and assume they got a bugged drop. You didn't. That's just how it works. Now, the lore behind this set is genuinely tragic. White Mask Varay, the very first NPC you meet in the entire game, wears this armor. He was a war surgeon abducted by Mog against his will, but somewhere between the kidnapping and your arrival in the lands between, Varay became so thoroughly devoted to the Lord of Blood's vision that he now serves as Mog's chief evangelist. He's not a prisoner anymore. He's a true believer, and every time you put on the war surgeon set, you're wearing the uniform of a man who was brainwashed so completely, he forgot he was ever taken. The community has strong opinions about this one. The White Mask, paired with Rivers of Blood, became the poster child for try-hard PvP meta, and wearing it in invasions is basically a declaration of war. But veterans will tell you the combo is actually redundant. The 20-second buff window rarely aligns cleanly with Rivers of Blood's damage output timing, meaning you're proccing bleed, getting the buff, and then spending most of that window repositioning instead of attacking. It looks scary on paper. In practice, it's less optimal than people think. But if you think the War Surgeon set causes arguments, wait until you see the armor that became Elden Ring's unofficial mascot, Raging Wolf set. If there's one armor set that the Elden Ring community collectively decided belongs to the protagonist, it's this one. And the story behind how you actually get it is way darker than most people realize. The Raging Wolf set belongs to Vargram, one of the very first Tarnished to arrive at the Round Table Hold. Vargram wasn't just some random warrior. He aspired to attain the status of a wolf based on old legends, which gives the entire armor this romantic, almost mythic quality. He wanted to be something greater than what the lands between expected of him. But the game doesn't let you buy this armor from a merchant or find it in a chest. You have to kill Vargram yourself. Here's how it works. You join Volcano Manor, take assassination contracts from Tanith, and after completing the preliminary hits, Recusant Bernal gives you his own contract to eliminate Vargram and his companion, errant sorcerer Wilhelm, in a co-op invasion. You are literally sent to murder one of your own kind, a fellow Tarnished, someone who walked the same path you did. And here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. Vargram and Wilhelm were friends, close allies, but according to the lore, external guidance drove them into conflict with each other, estranging them before you ever show up. The implication is that the Two Fingers, or some other unseen force, was actively engineering Tarnished on Tarnished violence. The game never fully explains why. It just lets that detail sit there, quietly horrifying, buried under all the action. Now let's talk stats, because this is where the fantasy crumbles. The full Raging Wolf set gives you 42 poise. That's decent, but nothing spectacular for a medium armor set. Elemental resistances are nothing to write home about either. This is not a competitive armor set. This is pure drip, fashion, and nothing else. But that's exactly why people love it. During the network test, this was the Bloody Wolf starter class armor. The earliest players who ever touched Elden Ring wore this set before the game even launched. That emotional attachment carried through to the full release, and never let go. Mix it with Rivers of Blood, and you've got the most iconic, most complained about silhouette in PvP history. One more thing worth knowing. This set is permanently missable. If you defeat Malekith and Crumbling Farum Azula, or kill Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, before completing Bernal's contracts, the entire questline locks out forever. 2 major story beats, and the wolf armor vanishes from your playthrough for good. But if you think fashion armor with 0 defensive value is frustrating, wait until you see the set that went completely the opposite direction. Bull Goat set, 100 poise. That's the number. The highest poise value any armor set can give you in Elden Ring, tied only with the Verdigris set from the DLC. And the Bull Goat set has held that crown since launch. But here's the thing, this armor doesn't just protect you, it punishes you. Because the Bull Goat set is also the single heaviest armor in the entire game, and if you don't have the endurance to back it up, you're fat rolling through every fight like a boulder with a health bar. Getting it requires patches. Specifically, it requires not killing patches. If you cut him down in Murkwater Cave, which honestly feels like the right thing to do, this set is gone forever, locked out, no second chances. But if you let him live and follow his questline through Volcano Manor's assassination contracts, he'll eventually send you to kill Great Horned Tragoth at the ruin-strewn precipice overlook. Beat Tragoth, and the full Bull Goat set is yours. Now here's where it gets complicated. Tragoth is basically Elden Ring's version of Havel the Rock. Massive armor, legendary reputation, looks like he could bench press a cathedral. But unlike Havel, who attacks you on sight in Dark Souls, Tragoth is genuinely friendly. You can summon him as a cooperator against multiple bosses, he helps you, he fights alongside you, and then Patches tells you to murder him for a contract. And you do it, because that's what the questline demands. The strongest looking guy in the area was on your side, and you killed him for a set of armor and a pat on the back from a con artist. But let's talk about why players actually wear this thing. The Bull Goat's talisman increases poise by 33%, which means you can hit even higher poise numbers without wearing the full set. Swap out the heaviest pieces, mix in lighter alternatives, and you still reach massive breakpoints. This is the knowledge that separates players who understand poise from players who just stack weight and pray. Since patch 1.07, the community has been arguing about whether full Bull Goat poise is even worth the endurance investment compared to hitting 51 poise with medium armor. That debate has never been settled. It probably never will be. And then there's the meme. Smoking on that Bull Goat pack turned this armor into a cultural landmark. Wearing the full Bull Goat set in PvP is a statement whether you intend it to be or not. You're either a poise god who knows exactly what they're doing, or you're the punchline. There is no in between. But if you think the Bull Goat gets roasted, wait until you see the armor that gets compared to an onion, Lionel's set. There's something deeply funny about walking into a quiet church in Landel, seeing a dead man on a bed, and immediately stripping him of his armor. No boss fight, no questline, no dramatic cutscene. You just walk into the building near the lower capital Church Grace, find a corpse lying peacefully on a bed, and take everything he owned. That's it. That's the acquisition method. Welcome to Elden Ring. But here's where it gets dark. That corpse is Lionel the Lionhearted, and the community figured out very quickly what probably happened to him. See, Lionel declared himself a father figure to Fia after finding her displaced and vulnerable. He took her under his protection, swore to keep her safe. Noble stuff. Chivalrous stuff. And then he ended up dead on a bed. In the same game where Fia's entire mechanic involves hugging people and draining their vitality, the math writes itself. Now, the game never confirms this. It never says Fia killed Lionel with a hug, but the implication is sitting right there on that mattress, and the community has been running with it since launch. There's also a whole separate debate about whether Lionel's relationship with Fia was genuinely paternal or something more romantic. The item descriptions are deliberately ambiguous, and From Software clearly wanted players to draw their own conclusions. Nobody can agree, and honestly, that's probably the point. Here's the thing most players miss, though. This goofy-looking armor is genuinely excellent. The full set provides 79 poise, which puts it in direct competition with far heavier alternatives. For the endurance cost, you're getting poise numbers that have zero business being this accessible. Players overlook Lionel's set constantly because of how it looks, and that is entirely their loss. Speaking of how it looks, the Albinauric mask paired with Lionel's chest piece has become one of the most celebrated fashion combinations in the entire community. The bulbous silhouette draws immediate comparisons to Siegward the Onion Knight from Dark Souls 3. Whether that reads as charming or completely ridiculous depends entirely on who you ask. But either way, people remember it. One critical warning. This set is permanently missable. Once you progress the story far enough for Landel to become the Ashen capital, the building's interior changes completely and the armor vanishes forever. No second chances. If you want Lionel's gear, grab it before you burn anything down, but if you think finding armor on a dead man's bed is unsettling, wait until you see what the Crucible Knights had to go through to earn theirs. Crucible. Axe. Set. Most armor in Elden Ring belongs to the Golden Order. It was forged under the Erd Tree, blessed by its influence, and worn by soldiers who served Marika's vision. The Crucible Axe set is older than all of that. This armor predates the Golden Order, entirely. It comes from a time before the Erd tree was worshipped, before Marika's religious and political structure existed, when the lands between was ruled by raw conquest and nothing else. The Crucible Knights served Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, back when he was still earning that title through blood and warfare. And the axe crest stamped across this armor isn't a generic military insignia. It's the personal mark of Ordovus, identifying these knights as direct servants of Godfrey himself, not foot soldiers in some general army, warriors who inherited his philosophy of combat, his approach to warfare as a concept. Here's the thing. Godfrey was known for overwhelming, earth-shattering physical power, pure brute force channeled through stomps and slams that could crack the ground itself. That's exactly what the Crucible represents, the primordial life energy that existed before the Erd tree co-opted it. The Crucible Knights channel that same raw intensity, blending incantations with heavy melee combat in a way that mirrors their lord's fighting style. The armor isn't just cosmetically associated with Godfrey. It embodies his entire warrior doctrine, and the game makes you earn it. The set drops from defeating 2 Crucible Knights simultaneously in Oriza Hero's grave in the Altus Plateau. But before you even reach that arena, you have to survive one of the most punishing chariot trap gauntlets in the entire game. No shortcuts, no cheese routes, just you and a series of instant death chariots that will flatten you repeatedly until you memorize every timing window. Then you get rewarded with a 2-on-1 boss fight against enemies that individually give most players trouble. Worth noting, there's also a Crucible tree set tied to a different branch of this same ancient military tradition. That one is found in the Deep-Root Depths, accessible through a coffin after defeating the valiant gargoyles in the Siofra Aqueduct. 2 paths to the same pre-Golden Order culture. The community has embraced both, but the axe set paired with the matching Crucible axe, spear, and shield creates one of the most thematically complete loadouts in the game. Every piece tells the same story. Every piece points back to a lands between that existed before everything the player spends 100 hours navigating was even built. That's what makes this armor quietly significant. You're not wearing a relic of the current power structure. You're wearing proof that something came before it. But if you think ancient armor carries heavy implications, wait until you see what the 3 fingers did to the knight who almost became Elden Lord. Fingerprint. Set. Vike wasn't some random tarnished. He was the tarnished, the one who got closer to the Elden throne than anyone else in history. Not a side character, not a background figure, but the player's most direct predecessor. The guy who was doing exactly what you're doing, and he was doing it better than everyone. He was so close to becoming Elden Lord that his story essentially serves as a warning about what happens when you get that far and still fail. You get his armor by defeating Round Table Knight Vike at the Lord Contender's Evergale in the mountaintops of the Giants. It's a late-game Evergale fight that doesn't exactly advertise the weight of what you're picking up. You walk in, you fight a guy, you win, you leave with a set of blackened armor covered in strange burn marks. Simple enough, but the story behind those marks is one of the most tragic in the entire game. The fingerprint burns covering every piece of this set are a visual record of Vike's contact with the 3 fingers. Not metaphorical, not symbolic. The corruption is literally branded into the metal. Every swirl, every ridge, every pattern on this armor tells you exactly what happened to him. He touched something he shouldn't have, and it left permanent scars on everything he wore. But here's where it gets really interesting. To receive the Frenzied Flame as the player, you have to strip completely naked. You must remove all armor before making contact with the 3 fingers. Every single piece. That's a hard mechanical requirement. And Vike's failure to complete this transformation, his inability to become the Lord of Frenzied Flame, may be directly tied to the fact that he never took off his armor. The set physically prevented his ascension. Think about that for a second. The armor he wore into battle, the gear that protected him through every fight on his journey to the throne, became the exact thing that stopped him from finishing. The barrier between Vike and godhood wasn't some cosmic force or a powerful enemy. It was his own equipment. That reframes how you think about armor in this world entirely. It's not just protection, it's identity. And sometimes identity is the thing that holds you back. Now, stat-wise, this set is deliberately frustrating. Poise sits around 41 to 43 for the full set, which sounds passable until you realize you're picking this up in the mountaintops of the Giants, where enemies hit like freight trains and that number barely keeps you standing. The lightning resistance is also notably poor, which creates an internal contradiction considering Vike's entire combat style revolves around lightning incantations and his signature spear. Players read this as either a straight-up oversight or a deliberate sign that Vike's corruption was never complete. The Frenzied Flame burned away his natural resistances but never fully claimed him. He's stuck in between between. Too corrupted to be the Elden Lord, not corrupted enough to be the Lord of Chaos. The argument for pursuing this set is almost entirely aesthetic and narrative. You're not wearing it because it makes your build stronger. You're wearing it because Vike's story deserves to be carried forward. The Tarnished, who came the closest and lost everything because he couldn't let go of what he was wearing, but if Vike's tragedy hits hard, wait until you see the armor belonging to someone who lost even more on her path to power. Millennia's set. You beat the hardest boss in From Software history. You spent hours, maybe days, learning every single one of Millennia's attack patterns, dodging Waterfowl Dance, surviving the Goddess of Rot phase, and finally watching that health bar hit 0. Your reward? Armor that loses a stat comparison to the Godric soldiers wandering around Limgrave in the first hour of the game. Let me explain. Millennia's set costs 56,000 runes total from Enya at the round table hold. 12,000 for the helm, 20,000 for the armor, 12,000 for the gauntlets, 12,000 for the greaves. And for that investment, you get nearly the lowest combined elemental resistances of any full armor set in the entire game. Physical defense? Mediocre. Poise? 37. That's it. Even if you slap on the Bullgoat Talisman, you're only hitting 49, which falls short of the 51 poise breakpoint that actually matters in PvE. You can't even tank a basic hit without staggering. But here's the thing. The stats aren't a mistake. They're lore accurate. The entire set is made of unalloyed gold, the specific material Miquella personally engineered to ward off outer god interference. This wasn't combat armor. It was never designed to stop a sword or absorb a fireball. It was a medical intervention. Miquella built this to protect his twin sister from the scarlet rot that was consuming her body from the inside out. Every piece of this armor exists because a brother was trying to save his dying sister, not because a general was preparing for war. That context completely reframes the terrible defensive stats. They make perfect sense when you understand the armor was functioning as a spiritual barrier, not a physical one. And then there's the gauntlet problem. Players noticed almost immediately after launch that the left gauntlet Millennia wears during her boss fight features distinct golden rings, but the version you actually equip shows a plain brown glove. It's a small cosmetic discrepancy. The community has not stopped talking about it since release. It's the kind of detail that proves just how closely people scrutinize every single pixel of this set, because Millennia means that much to the player base. The real debate around this armor has never been resolved, and honestly, probably never will be. One side of the community wears the full set purely as a trophy. You killed Millennia. You earned the right to look like her. Stats are irrelevant when you're wearing proof that you conquered the hardest fight in the game. The other side calls it a stat trap that From Software should have patched, arguing that endgame boss armor should at least compete with mid-game alternatives. Neither side is wrong. The trophy players understand something about identity that the optimization players don't, and the optimization players understand something about game design that the trophy players ignore. Both positions are completely legitimate, and the tension between them says more about how players relate to gear than any stat sheet ever could. But if Millennia's armor disappoints in raw numbers, wait until you see what happens when you wear the armor of the literal first Elden Lord. Elden Lord set. Let's be honest right away. The Elden Lord set is disappointing. Even with the full set equipped, the defensive values are objectively worse than Godric soldier armor you can pick up within 2 hours of starting the game. This is the armor of the first and greatest Elden Lord, and it gets outperformed by gear worn by the guys who guard a castle gate. That's the reality, and every player who has ever bought this set from Enya knows it. You earn it by defeating Godfrey in one of the most demanding two-phase fights in the entire game. First as Godfrey, first Elden Lord, a composed warrior wielding his golden axe with terrifying precision. Then as Huara Lu, warrior, where he rips Sirach off his own back and becomes a bare-knuckle brawler who grabs you off the ground and slams you into the earth like you owe him money. You survive all of that, and your reward is an armor set that loses to starter gear on a spreadsheet. But here's the thing. Read the item description. It ties the set to the moment Godfrey's eyes lost their golden hue. That's not a poetic flourish. That's the exact moment in the lore when he had defeated every worthy enemy in the lands between. Every last one. There was nothing left to conquer, so Grace abandoned him, and Marika exiled him. The armor you're wearing isn't the armor of a king at his peak. It's the clothing of a man who had nothing left to fight for. A warrior stripped of purpose. And that reframes everything. The community has been vocal about one genuine missed opportunity. There's zero zero Sirach iconography anywhere on the set. No lion motifs, no beast imagery, nothing referencing the loyal companion Godfrey suppressed on his back for centuries to contain his bloodlust. Players have pointed this out since launch, and honestly, they're right. A Sirach reference on the cloak, or pauldrons, would have elevated the entire set from forgettable to iconic. What does work is the Elden Lord crown. It pairs surprisingly well with completely unrelated armor sets, making it a staple for mixed fashion builds. But the full set together, almost never the optimal choice. Not for defense, not for poise, not for any measurable stat. Wearing it is a pure declaration of intent, and maybe that's exactly the point. In a game where every piece of gear carries a story, the Elden Lord set asks you a question that no stat screen can answer. Are you wearing armor to survive, or are you wearing it to mean something? Godfrey chose duty over power. He served the Golden Order until it had no use for him, then walked away with nothing but the clothes on his back. Choosing to wear his armor, despite its weakness, might be the most in-character decision you can make as a tarnished walking toward that same throne. Sometimes the most meaningful thing you can wear is the thing that doesn't help you at all. From one boss fight that might have taken hours to complete to a weapon that changes your whole build, this is every remembrance weapon in Elden Ring explained Axe of Godric. This is the I Peaked in Stormveil axe, and it's way better than it has any right to be for something born from pure insecurity. You're literally wielding Godric's idea of greatness. Heavy, loud, desperate. It comes from the remembrance of the grafted, and everything about it screams, look at me. The Axe of Godric is for players who like straightforward, weighty swings, but still want that boss weapon flair. It's not subtle. It doesn't need to be. What makes it good is the sheer stance pressure and crowd clearing feel you get from a heavy Great Axe moveset. When you land clean hits, enemies tend to flinch, fold, or both. It turns tight spaces into your personal nope zone. And if Godric's answer to weakness was more metal, the next weapon is him taking that concept to a deeply uncomfortable place. Grafted Dragon. This is what happens when a man looks at his arm and says, what if my hand was a dragon? And nobody stops him. Also, from the remembrance of the grafted, this one isn't a sword or axe. It's the grafting fantasy made real, a weapon that feels like body horror with a moveset. It's perfect for the kind of build that wants intimidation factor first, and practicality second. You're not just fighting, you're showing up as a walking before picture of what the Golden Lineage became. What makes it worth using is that it comes with a built-in dragon-flavored weapon skill that adds a bursty, showy hit option. Great for bullying smaller enemies and finishing openings when you want damage without committing to a long combo. It's not the most meta remembrance pick, but it is one of the most why is my arm screaming picks. But if you want your boss weapon to feel less like a medical emergency, let's talk about the one that turns sorcery into royalty, Carrion Regal Scepter. This isn't a staff, it's a diploma with a pointy end. It's one of the 2 rewards tied to the remembrance of the Full Moon Queen. Just holding it says, I've made peace with the fact that my brain is my main weapon. The Carrion Regal Scepter is for players who want to cast like they own the room. It's elegant, heavy with status, and it pairs perfectly with the vibe of calmly deleting enemies while wearing something expensive. What makes it genuinely strong is its top-tier sorcery scaling once your intelligence is high. Plus, it specifically boosts full moon sorceries, so those big royal spells hit harder and feel like actual finishers instead of fireworks. And if anyone gets close, the built-in spinning weapon skill gives you a backup button that can swat greedy enemies who think you're free. Now, if you're tired of elegance and want something that feels like a religious scandal you can swing, good, because Rykard exists. Blasphemous Blade. Blasphemous Blade is the ultimate I don't want to learn this boss, I want the boss to learn me weapon. It's obtained from the remembrance of the blasphemous. The blade is literally described as a devouring monument to Rykard's whole family situation, and it's known for stealing HP through its signature skill. It's one of the most infamous remembrance weapons because it rewards aggression with sustain. You hit, you heal, you keep moving. It's the closest thing Elden Ring offers to a villain arc you can equip, where your survival is powered by other people having a worse day than you. What makes it borderline OP is the weapon skill. A huge, reliable ranged slash that hits hard and heals you on connection, which means you can trade into danger and still come out ahead. In PvE especially, it turns I'm low HP from panic into a suggestion. And speaking of bosses who leave a lasting impression, the next weapon comes from a man who weaponized gravity and made it everyone's problem. Starscourge Greatsword. This is 2 swords pretending to be one weapon, because Radon never did anything in moderation. It's a remembrance reward from Starscourge Radon, paired with his whole gravity-warped identity. The Starscourge Greatsword is for strength-heavy players who want crowd control baked into the fantasy. It's huge, it's theatrical, and it feels like you're dragging the battlefield toward you instead of chasing enemies around like a stressed-out mall cop. What makes it strong is the weapon skill. It pulls enemies in with gravity and then slams them, which is basically a built-in delete the mob pack button and a great way to force openings on anything that tries to surround you. If you like controlling space more than chasing targets, this weapon does the chasing for you. But Radon didn't just leave behind blades. He also left behind something for the "I like damage but from very far away" crowd: Lion Greatbow. The Lion Greatbow is what happens when a demigod says archery is cool, but what if it was also terrifying? It's the other main weapon reward from the Remembrance of the Star Scourge. This is the Remembrance weapon for players who like the idea of turning bosses into pincushions with authority. Greatbows in general feel like you're firing a telephone pole at someone, and this one carries that legendary general energy. What makes it good is the sheer burst from Greatbow shots combined with its signature skill, which lets you rain down a volley-style attack, perfect for punishing big, slow targets or opening fights from a safe distance with serious damage. It's not an all-purpose weapon, but in the right situations it feels like you're calling artillery. Now let's pivot from battlefield legend to something that feels like a nightmare fossil that learned how to bite: Winged Greathorn. Winged Greathorn feels less like a crafted weapon and more like you tore it out of a myth and decided to keep it. It comes from the Remembrance of the Regal Ancestor, one of the most eerie, ritual-heavy fights in the game's underground. This is for players who want a weapon that looks ancient, strange, and slightly cursed. It's the kind of thing you equip and suddenly your character looks like they should be whispering prophecies instead of farming runes. What makes it good is its built-in skill that debuffs enemies' defense, which means your follow-up hits and your whole kit start doing noticeably more work after you tag something once. And it's less about one-shot power and more about setting the target up to get bullied. And if you want that same cosmic weirdness, but condensed into a spiked flail that screams in space, Astel has your number: Bastard Stars. Bastard Stars is proof that Elden Ring will let you beat a cosmic horror, and then hand you a weapon that looks like it should not exist in the same reality as your knees. It's the weapon reward from the Remembrance of the Natural Born, Astel's whole void problem. This is for the player who likes weapons that feel alien. It's not about knight fantasy. It's about pulling Starlight into a melee option and making it personal. Its real value is the skill: an explosive, magic-heavy burst that can punish tight groups and dump serious damage into larger targets when you time it into an opening. It's weird, it's flashy, and when it lands clean, it feels like you just slapped someone with a piece of the night sky. But if cosmic horror isn't enough and you want something more humanly cruel, let's talk about Morgoth. Morgoth's cursed sword. This sword feels like resentment given edge alignment. It's a remembrance weapon tied to Morgoth, the Omen King, meaning it's literally forged from a life spent being rejected, then forced to protect the same world that hated him. The appeal here is vibe and pressure: curved, aggressive, built for players who want to keep moving and keep enemies flinching. It's the kind of weapon that makes your fights feel like duels, even when you're bullying a basic soldier. The weapon skill is the selling point: a fast lunging slash combo that covers distance and stacks pressure, letting you punish panic rolls, tag bosses during recoveries, and keep momentum without needing a huge opening. It's one of those weapons that feels better the more you play confidently, because it rewards you for staying on top of the enemy instead of backing off. Now, if you want a weapon that's less duelist and more ritual sight with legs, Mog is ready. Mogwyn's Sacred Spear. This is not a spear. This is a sermon, and every stab is a paragraph. It's a remembrance weapon from the Bloodlord, and its signature move is literally Bloodboon Ritual, because of course it is. Mog's spear is for arcane-flavored builds that want bleed, spectacle, and the feeling that you're committing a crime against nature every time you press the button. Its skill is why people fear it: a massive blood flame ritual that hits repeatedly in a wide area, melts groups, and chunks big targets hard enough that fights start feeling unfair in your favor. If you like weapons that turn one good opening into a full health bar panic, this is one of the nastiest remembrance picks, and if blood is one kind of horror, rot is the next. Because Millennia doesn't just fight you, she edits your future. Hand of Millennia. Hand of Millennia is elegance weaponized. It looks graceful, right up until it turns you into a statistic. It's the remembrance weapon from the Rot Goddess, and it's permanently tied to Waterfowl Dance, the move everyone has nightmares about. This weapon is for the player who wants speed with consequence. You're not swinging a katana, you're performing. The entire reason to run it is the skill. Waterfowl Dance? Not a multi-hit flurry that can erase enemies when you catch them in the right window, especially if you've built around sustained pressure. It's not easy mode, though. It rewards spacing, confidence, and knowing when you're allowed to commit, because whiffing that dance in front of a boss is basically signing a consent form. But if you're done being graceful and want something that feels like the end of a rulebook, Malekith is next. Malekith's Black Blade. This is the kind of weapon that makes the air feel quieter, like the world is bracing. It's the remembrance weapon from Malekith, the Black Blade, one of the most lore-loaded beings in the game. This is for players who like heavy weapons with finality. It carries that holy but terrifying energy, like you're swinging judgment, not steel. Its skill is the payoff, a sweeping Destined Death-style attack that hits hard at range and keeps pressure on bosses even when they try to back away, making it a great close the distance slash keep the turn tool for strength faith builds. It feels dramatic because it is, is. Every use looks like the end credits trying to start early. Now, if you want something less death incarnate and more I am the boss now, Godfrey's kit is basically a warning label. Axe of Godfrey. Axe of Godfrey is the weapon equivalent of kicking the door off its hinges and calling it diplomacy. It's the remembrance weapon from Huaralu/Godfrey, aka the man who treats honor like it's measured in crater size. This is for strength builds that want impact. It's not about finesse, it's about control. The weapon skill is a shockwave heavy slam that turns openings into crowd control, letting you flatten groups and bully anything that tries to trade with you up close. If you like the feeling of making enemies stagger just from existing near you, this axe plays like a threat the whole fight. And if you like big impact but want it dipped in ancient dragon weirdness, Faramazula has something sharp for you, Dragon King's Cragblade. This is what you pick when you want a weapon that feels like it was carved out of a storm. It's a remembrance weapon tied to Dragon Lord Placidus Axe. The name alone sounds like it should come with thunder. The Cragblade vibe is precision brutality. It's for players who want that dragon aesthetic without turning into a full-time caster. Yeah, its skill is the highlight, a lightning-charged thrust that turns you into a guided missile for a moment. Great for punishing openings, deleting a chunk of HP, and making bosses regret standing still. It's one of those remembrance weapons that actually feels as lethal as its lore. Now, let's leave dragons behind and talk about the end of the world. Condensed into two weapons that feel like the credits are rolling and I'm still swinging energy. Marika's Hammer. Marika's Hammer is what you swing when you want to roleplay as the reason history cracked. It's one of the two weapons from the Elden Remembrance, meaning it's tied to the final stretch of the game's cosmic power structure. This is pure symbolic violence. It's not just a hammer, it's the idea of shattering order turned into a tool. Its skill is a massive holy shockwave slam that punishes crowds and catches slower enemies in a big you're not allowed to stand there zone. Great when you want a single button that feels like a boss phase transition. Not the fastest weapon, but it hits with endgame authority. But if you'd rather turn that same endgame energy into something cleaner, something that says I farm runes and I feel nothing, then this next one is infamous for a reason. Sacred Relic Sword. Sacred Relic Sword is the most polite looking weapon that can still wipe a room like it's deleting spam emails. It's the other weapon you can claim from the Elden Remembrance, and its signature skill is Wave of Gold. This sword is for players who love reach, sweep, and that golden finale aesthetic. Its skill, Wave of Gold, is the whole identity, an enormous horizontal blast that clears mobs at ridiculous range, which is why it's famous for farming and for turning crowded fights into empty hallways. It's not subtle, it's efficient. It's basically a broom with divine consequences. Alright, base game remembrance weapons are already unhinged, but the Land of Shadow took that concept and said, what if we made it weirder on purpose? Shadow of the Erdtree Remembrance weapons. R'Lana's Twin Blade. This weapon is for people who want their moveset to look like a duel, even when they're fighting a crab. It's one of the remembrance picks tied to R'Lana, and it carries that whole Spellblade royalty vibe. Clean stance, clean posture, and absolutely zero patience for sloppy spacing. R'Lana's Twin Blade is built for fast, controlled pressure. Hits come out quick. Strings feel smooth, and it rewards players who like staying in that sweet spot where the enemy can't reset the fight. The skill is where it starts feeling special. It leans into that elegant, multi-hit, momentum-heavy style that lets you punish openings hard and keep your offense rolling without needing a colossal window. It's one of those remembrance weapons that feels cool and practical. Style that actually cashes out in combat. And if that was refined and surgical, the next one is the opposite. Like someone took a nightmare, froze it, and handed you the handle. Putrescent Cleaver. This is the DLC saying, what if Frostbite, but with a great axe that looks like it came from a nightmare butcher shop. It's a remembrance weapon from the Putrescent Knight, and it carries that rotten cold aesthetic, like the game dared you to swing it in public. The Putrescent Cleaver is for heavy weapon players who still want status pressure baked in. It hits with that chunky great axe authority, but it also leans into a colder, nastier game plan, where repeated contact starts tipping fights in your favor. Its skill is the standout, aggressive, committal, and perfect for turning one opening into a momentum swing, especially against enemies that normally try to dance out of heavy weapons. It's the kind of weapon that makes you play like you're always one good hit away from ending the conversation. Now, if you want something that feels engineered, like it shouldn't exist, but does anyway, Commander Gaius left behind a weapon that's basically a geometry lesson with a blade. Sword Lance. Sword Lance feels like the DLC dared someone to invent a weapon category mid-fight. It's the remembrance weapon tied to Commander Gaius, built around that mounted commander brutality, except now you're the one holding the problem. This is for players who love spacing control. It plays like a weapon that wants to own the mid-range. Poke first, punish approaches, and keep enemies exactly where you want them. Its skill amplifies that don't come near me identity, letting you convert a clean read into a hard punish without needing a long combo window. If you like fights that feel tactical, where you win by controlling distance rather than out-trading, this one feels nasty in the best way. And if that was sharp and technical, the next remembrance weapon is pure chaos, because it's literally a giant flower's revenge Revenge Arc you get to swing. Yeah, Shadow Sunflower Blossom. This is what happens when the game takes a plant, gives it trauma, then asks you to bonk people with it. It's the Remembrance Weapon from the Skagitry Avatar. A colossal weapon with a name that sounds pretty until it turns the ground into regret. This one is all about absurd impact. It's a colossal style bonk weapon that turns mistakes into knockdowns and makes mobs regret grouping up. The skill is the fun part. It's a big, dramatic slam style payoff that can catch multiple enemies and turn an opening into a full reset in your favor. It's not for speed demons, it's for players who want to feel like they're swinging a boss arena prop, and somehow it works. But if you'd rather trade blunt force comedy for something elegant and poisonous, Romina's Remembrance Weapon is basically Do Not Touch in polearm form. Pole Blade of the Bud. This is the beautiful, poisonous, please don't touch weapon. It's the Remembrance Weapon from Romina, Saint of the Bud, wrapped in that refined but rotten vibe the DLC does so well. The Pole Blade of the Bud is for players who like sustained pressure and constant movement. It's fast, it flows, and it rewards you for staying close enough to be dangerous, without standing still long enough to get punished. Its skill leans into that same style. Quick, stylish, and built to stack damage over time by keeping the enemy in your rhythm. If you like weapons that feel like a dance, but still leave status and regret behind, this one's a problem. Now, if you want something that feels holy, but plays like a curse with good posture, Midra left behind a weapon that looks like it should not be legal. Great Sword of Damnation. And Great Sword of Damnation is the kind of weapon that looks like it should come with a warning prompt. Are you sure you want to be perceived like this? It's the Remembrance Weapon from Midra, Lord of Frenzied Flame. So yes, it's basically religious imagery turned hostile. This is for players who want a greatsword with menace, not just damage. It's heavy, oppressive, and it makes fights feel like you're dragging the enemy into your pace, whether they like it or not. Its skill is the real intimidation. Big, controlling, and designed to punish anyone caught in front of you, which turns clean reads into nasty momentum swings. It's not a mash weapon. It's a make them regret being close weapon. And if frenzy is horror, the fingers are cosmic horror, because Meter's Remembrance gives you two wildly different ways to weaponize the unknown. Enter Staff of the Great Beyond. This staff is for people who want their build to scream, yes, I multistat, yes, it hurts, no, I won't stop. It's one of the remembrance options from Mater, Mother of Fingers. Basically, the DLC's way of handing you a piece of cosmic math homework. This one shines if you're the type who mixes spell schools instead of picking a lane. It supports that hybrid caster identity where you're swapping between different types of magic depending on the situation. The skill gives you a unique casting utility that fits the otherworldly theme, more of a control/utility button than a raw damage nuke, so it's strongest in builds that actually use variety instead of spamming one spell forever. Niche, but extremely cool when it clicks. Oh, but if you don't want to cast the unknowable, and you'd rather swing it like a grudge, Meter's other option is unforgettable. Gazing Finger. Gazing Finger is a colossal weapon that looks like it should be in a museum exhibit titled Do Not Make Eye Contact. It's the other remembrance weapon from Meter, because nothing says reward like being handed a gigantic finger-shaped threat. This weapon is pure vibe damage. It's for players who want their character to look like they crawled out of a forbidden archive carrying something that should have stayed sealed. It hits with that heavy, crushing cadence that makes trades feel unfair when you land them. The skill is the weird flex. It adds a supernatural, gaze-themed effect that turns openings into spectacle and makes the weapon feel less like Big Stick and more like Eldritch Consequence. Not the most universally efficient, but it's one of the coolest, what am I even holding, remembrance weapons in the DLC. Alright, enough finger horror. Let's talk about Mesmer, whose remembrance weapon is basically war crime, but stylish. Spear of the Impaler. This is the spear you pick when you want every fight to feel like a boss cutscene. It's a remembrance weapon from Mesmer the Impaler. Fast, aggressive, and built around that don't blink pressure. Great spears already feel authoritative, and this one feels personal. It's for players who like momentum. Get in, keep the pressure, and never let the enemy feel safe enough to breathe. Its skill is the highlight. A high impact or signature style sequence that lets you cash out openings with big damage and strong presence, especially against targets that usually try to disengage. If you like weapons that make you feel like you are the Phase 2, this is it. And now, the final pair. Two swords that basically ask, what if the end of the DLC was also a weapon choice you'll argue about forever? Great Sword of Radon Lord. The Lord version feels like power that expects you to kneel first, and then get flattened anyway. It's one of the remembrance weapons tied to promised consort Radon. Pure late game, my shadow has a boss bar energy. This is for players who want a colossal sword that feels ceremonial and oppressive. It plays like dominance, big reach, heavy commitment, and the kind of hits that change an enemy's posture even when they don't want it to. Yes, the skill reinforces that commanding presence vibe, giving you a dramatic payoff button that turns an opening into a statement rather than just damage. If you like controlling the tempo by forcing enemies to react to you, this version fits. But if that sounded too heavy and regal, the other version is all about speed and spectacle, like a meteor learned swordplay. Great Sword of Radon Light. This one feels like like the game handed you a colossal sword and said, okay, but what if it moved like a flash of punishment? It's the alternate remembrance weapon from Promise Consort Radon, distinct enough that it doesn't just feel like a reskin, it feels like a different attitude. It's for players who want late game impact without always feeling slow. You still get that colossal reach and intimidation, but it plays with a snappier rhythm that makes punishes feel cleaner. The skill leans into the light identity. More speed, more spectacle, more I'm on you instantly energy. So it's better at turning quick openings into big payoff, without needing the enemy to stand still forever. If you want Radon power with less lumber and more violence per second, this is the one. And that's the full lineup. Because in Elden Ring, even a remembrance turns into a weapon, and a choice you'll defend like it's your build's personality. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more Elden Ring deep dives like this, like and subscribe, and drop a comment with the remembrance weapon you swear by, or the one you took once and immediately regret. Today, I'll be going over all of the most secret items in Elden Ring. Golden Scarab. This talisman boosts your rune gain by 20%, and it's locked behind one of the most annoying boss fights in Caelid. You'll find it in the abandoned cave, guarding a treasure room after you fight 2 clean-rot knights in a closet-sized arena. These aren't regular enemies. They're the same knights that gave you PTSD in the swamp of Aeonia. Except now there's 2 of them, and you can barely roll without clipping a wall. The Golden Scarab became essential the moment players realized Elden Ring's open world meant grinding runes wasn't optional, it was survival. Early patches had people farming 11,000 runes from that cliff in Caelid, where enemies just walk off and die. With the Golden Scarab equipped, that became 13,200 per cycle. The math made it non-negotiable for anyone trying to level past 100 without losing their mind. From Software knew exactly what they were doing. They put the game's best farming tool behind a fight that punishes rune farmers specifically, because of course they did. What makes this secret isn't the location. It's that most players walk past Abandoned Cave entirely because it's tucked into a ravine in Caelid that looks like every other poison-filled hellscape. The real trick is surviving the rot buildup long enough to even reach the fog wall. And here's the thing, if you're going for a one-shot build or any kind of level cap challenge run, you need this talisman before you even think about Leyndell. Without it, you're grinding twice as long for half the progress. But that's just survival optimization. What if I told you there's a talisman that cuts armor grinding from 3 hours to 20 minutes? Keep that in mind, because without it, half the game's content stays locked behind RNG hell. Silver Scarab. This one boosts item discovery by 75 points, which sounds boring until you realize it's the difference between farming a full armor set in 20 minutes versus 3 hours. You find it in the hidden path to the Halig Tree, but getting there requires you to walk across an invisible bridge in a giant crystal cave while praying you don't roll off into the void. There's no visual indicator, no prism stone trail unless you bring your own. Just faith that From Software wouldn't put a talisman at the end of a path that doesn't exist. Except they would, and they did. The Silver Scarab sits at the far end of this invisible walkway, waiting for players who either read the developers' minds or watched a YouTube video with 4 million views titled How to Get Silver Scarab Easy. The community figured this out within days of launch because someone noticed a message on the ground that said, "Didn't expect invisible path," with 9,000 appraisals. That message saved more players than any tutorial FromSoft never wrote. The reason this matters goes beyond convenience. Elden Ring has armor sets with drop rates around 3% per piece. The Banished Knight set, the Clean Rot set, the Nox Monk robes. Without the Silver Scarab, you're killing the same enemy 50 times hoping for RNG mercy. With it, you cut that grind in half. For completionists trying to collect every piece of gear, this talisman isn't optional. It's the difference between finishing the game and uninstalling out of frustration. From Software knew players would want everything, so they hid the solution on a bridge made of nothing. Farming tools hidden on invisible bridges. That's annoying. But what FromSoft did next actually breaks your playthrough if you're not careful. And one weapon proves they'll delete content from your game just because you progressed normally. Bolt of Gransax. This legendary spear is one of the best faith weapons in the game, and it becomes permanently missable the moment you turn Leyndell into the capital of Ash. You find it by climbing the dragon statue near the Erdtree Sanctuary, jumping onto a balcony that doesn't look climbable, and grabbing a giant golden lightning bolt that's been sitting there since the game launched. The catch? If you beat Malekith and trigger the city's transformation, the spear vanishes forever. No warning, no NPC telling you to grab it first, just gone. This is From Software's favorite type of cruelty. They put one of 10 legendary armaments required for an achievement in a location that becomes inaccessible through normal story progression. Players who don't obsessively explore every ledge in Leyndell before the endgame will hit New Game Plus and realize they missed it. Reddit threads from 2022 are filled with people asking, "Where's the Bolt of Gransax after Leyndell burns?" And the answer is is always the same. You're locked out, start over, or live with the gap in your collection. The weapon itself is incredible for faith builds. It scales with dexterity and faith, has a unique weapon art that throws lightning bolts from a distance, and looks like you ripped it off a dead god, which you basically did, since the lore implies it belonged to Gransax, the ancient dragon who attacked Leyndell. From Software took an entire dragon's story and made it optional content you can miss by progressing too fast. The message here is clear. Exploration isn't a suggestion, it's mandatory if you want everything the game offers. Missable weapons that vanish when the city burns. Frustrating, sure, but at least you can see the city changing. What comes next is worse, because FromSoft started hiding weapons behind NPC conversations you'll never have unless you rest at the exact right bonfires in the exact right order. And if you think that's bad, wait until you see what the DLC did, Eleonora's Pole Blade. You get this by defeating the invader Eleonora Violet at the Second Church of Marika. Triggers automatically upon reaching Altus Plateau. Completing Yura's questline provides additional lore and leads to the same encounter. It's a blood-infused twin blade that fires arcing slashes and builds bleed faster than most katanas. 4 bleed builds. This thing is a monster. The secret here is Yura's questline, which has progression flags tied to sites of grace that can cause you to miss dialogues or stages if not followed precisely. Miss the encounter at Murkwater Cave and Yura never shows up again. Kill the boss in Raya Lucaria before meeting him at the lake and his dialogue skips forward, potentially locking you out of later stages. From Software designed this quest to punish players who explore too efficiently. You're supposed to wander aimlessly, stumble into NPCs at exact moments, and somehow remember where they said they'd be 3 regions ago. No quest log, no markers, just vibes and community wikis. Eleonora's Pole Blade became a PvP staple because its weapon art covers huge range while stacking bleed buildup. Players using dual bleed weapons could proc hemorrhage in 2 hits, deleting health bars before opponents even got close. Patch 1.03 nerfed bleed scaling, but the Pole Blade stayed strong because its base moveset was already fast. From Software didn't nerf the weapon's identity, just the numbers. They knew it was powerful when they hid it behind a quest most players would never complete without help, so NPC quests can brick your rewards. That's FromSoft's signature cruelty. But the DLC took this further. They added items that disappear based on who you choose to trust. And here's the twist. You won't know you made the wrong choice until it's already gone. Sword of Night. This one's in the DLC and it's obtained by giving Jolan the Iris of Occultation after completing Count Ymir's questline. In the Cathedral of Manus Matir, giving her the Iris of Grace instead rewards Jolan and Anna's Spirit Ash. It's a katana with a dark blade that scales with intelligence and faith. Perfect for hybrid builds running both sorceries and incantations. The DLC introduced choice-based missables as a new flavor of cruelty. Shadow of the Erdtree added NPCs like Ansbach, Leda, and Hornsent, all with overlapping quests that force you to pick sides. Help one, betray another. The Sword of Night is just one of several rewards that vanish depending on your decisions. From Software took the base game's Miss It if you explore wrong philosophy and upgraded it to Miss It if you choose wrong. Now you can't even replay the DLC without New Game Plus to see every item. What makes the Sword of Night special isn't just its stats. It's the fact that Jolan's quest ties into the lore about Miquella's followers and the Shadow Realm's deeper mysteries. The sword itself is linked to the Night of Black Knives, the event that killed Godwyn and shattered the Elden Ring. From Software buried critical lore items behind dialogue trees and invasion mechanics, then expected players to figure it out while dodging Messmer's fire spears. The community solved it through sheer collective obsession, but solo players? They're missing half the story. Choice-based missables where you pick between characters without knowing what. You'll lose. That's the DLC's new nightmare. But dialogue trees are just half the problem, because FromSoft also hid items behind parkour sections that would make platformer speedrunners quit, and one spell proves they'll test your patience just to see if you'll break first. Ancestral Infant's Head. This sorcery tool summons floating spirit heads that swarm enemies with magic damage. You find it by doing parkour in the Siofra River, jumping between stone pillars and praying your depth perception doesn't fail. One wrong roll and you're falling into the void, respawning at the last grace, and questioning every choice that led you to farming a spell in an underground river. The Ancestral Infant's Head is situational. It's strong against groups, but useless in tight spaces, where the spirit heads clip through walls. Most players grab it because it looks cool, and the Ancestral Worshippers have some of the creepiest designs in the game. But the real reason From Software hid it behind platforming is to test whether you're willing to die 20 times for a spell you might never use. The answer, for most players, is yes, because if it's in the game, you want it. This is where Elden Ring's secret design philosophy gets obvious. They're not hiding items to make them rare, they're hiding them to see how much frustration players will tolerate before giving up. The Ancestral Infant's Head doesn't break the game. It's just another tool in a toolbox with 50 other options. But From Software knows completionists will spend an hour dying to parkour rather than leave it uncollected. That's not respect for player determination. That's behavioral psychology wrapped in achievement bait. Dying 20 times for a spell skill you might never use. That's behavioral psychology disguised as game design, but at least you can see where you're jumping. What if I told you there's a talisman in the sewers that changes the entire PvP meta? And most players never found it because nobody wants to explore literal underground toilets. This is where secrets stop being clever. If you are enjoying the breakdown so far and don't want to miss out on any new releases, smash that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. Retaliatory Crossed Tree. This talisman boosts your attack power on attacks performed immediately after a critical hit. You obtain it as a reward from Lada's questline in the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC by siding with her during invasions against Ansbach. From Software hid a meta-defining talisman in the one place nobody wants to look, because they knew exactly what they were doing. The Retaliatory Crossed Tree changes parry builds from gimmick territory to genuinely competitive. A perfect parry already staggers most enemies for a critical hit. Add a 30-second damage buff, and you're stringing together parry chains that delete bosses in seconds. Speedrunners love this thing. PvP players abused it until everyone learned to bait parries with delayed attacks. From Software introduced a talisman that rewards perfect timing, then hid it where only people reading wikis would ever find it. The casual player base missed it entirely. This pattern repeats across Elden Ring's secret items. The most impactful tools are buried in locations the game never points you toward. There's no NPC saying, check the sewers. No environmental storytelling leading you underground. Just a chest in a tunnel you'll never visit unless you're following a guide. From Software built an open world, then filled it with secrets that require external resources to discover. That's not clever design. That's outsourcing exploration to the internet. Meta-defining gear hidden in sewers. No hints, no direction, just hoping you check every random chest. But FromSoft wasn't done. The DLC introduced something worse: weapons locked behind faction choices where picking the obvious ally means you lose the better reward, and the game never warns you. Obsidian Lamina. This Reaper-like sword is the reward for siding with Ansbach during the DLC's final quest branches. If you choose Leda instead, you get a different weapon, and the Obsidian Lamina locks permanently. It's a blood-scaling sword with a weapon art that summons shadow slashes, and it's one of the best DLC weapons for bleed builds. Shadow of the Erdtree introduced multiple endings based on which NPCs you support. Ansbach, Leda, Hornsent, Thiolier, they all have quests that overlap and contradict each other. Help one, the others turn hostile. The Obsidian Lamina is locked behind siding with Ansbach, which means betraying Leda before the final boss. Most players chose Leda because she's the more obvious ally, which means they missed Ansbach's sword entirely. From Software designed a choice system where the right answer depends on which weapon you want more. This is where secret items stop being about exploration and start being about information asymmetry. You can't make an informed choice if you don't know what you're choosing between. The DLC never tells you that helping Leda means missing Ansbach's gear. It just assumes you'll either look it up or accept losing content. For a game that sold 28.6 million copies, that's a design philosophy that only works because the community fills the gaps. Without Reddit threads and Fextralife wiki entries, half these items would stay secret forever. Faction wars where the wrong ally costs you legendary weapons. You'd think that's the peak of missable content. But FromSoft had one more trick. They hid a dragon transformation behind a single-use consumable, and if you use it once, it's gone forever. Why? Because they could. Priestess Heart. This consumable lets you transform into a dragon, changing your moveset and giving you access to dragon breath attacks. You get it by completing a specific NPC quest in the DLC that involves choosing between the priestess and another character. Pick wrong, and the heart vanishes. The transformation lasts until you rest at a site of grace, and the item remains in your inventory for repeated use. It's missable if you don't align with the right faction. This design choice exists purely to force replays. There's no lore reason the transformation needs to be single use. It's artificial scarcity designed to make the item feel rare, when really it's just annoying. What makes this a secret isn't the complexity. It's that the game never explains transformation items exist. You stumble into the priestess quest, make dialogue choices that seem arbitrary, and suddenly you're holding a heart that turns you into a dragon. No tutorial, no warning that you're about to lock yourself into a decision. Just From Software trusting you'll figure it out after the fact. The community solved this in days, but solo players are still discovering the priestess heart years later and realizing they made the wrong choice in 2024. One-time transformations that vanish after a single use. That's not clever design, that's just cruel. But at least those are intentional. What comes next exists because FromSoft's quest design actively fights against itself, and one charm proves you can lock yourself out of rewards just by playing the game normally. Magic Scorpion Charm. This talisman boosts magic damage by 12%, but increases physical damage taken by 10%. You get it from Saluvis after completing his quest, which requires giving him a potion that turns an NPC into a puppet. The catch? If you progress certain other quests too far, Saluvis dies, and his shop closes forever. No charm for you. The secret isn't finding it, it's knowing when to do his quest before the game locks you out. From Software designed overlapping NPC questlines that punish you for progressing naturally. Seluvis dies if you complete Ranni's quest past a certain point, but Ranni's quest is one of the longest and most rewarding in the game, so most players focus on that first. By the time they remember Seluvis exists, he's a corpse, and his inventory is gone. The magic scorpion charm becomes missable not because it's hidden, but because the quest structure assumes you're tracking 6 different NPCs simultaneously without any in-game tools. This is the point where secret item becomes quest design failure. The charm itself is powerful for mage builds. Boosting magic damage by 12% is significant when you're stacking sorcery buffs and using Comet Azure to delete bosses. But From Software tied it to a questline that conflicts with another major quest, then offered no warning that you're about to lock yourself out. The community figured out the optimal quest order through trial and error. Everyone else just misses the charm and doesn't realize it exists until they check a wiki. Quests that die because you completed other quests. That's where secrets become design failures. But even that isn't the final layer, because in 2024, Miyazaki admitted there's one secret nobody's found yet, and after 2 years of data mining, the community still has no idea what it is. Miyazaki's undiscovered element. In a 2024 interview, Hidetaka Miyazaki said there's one small element in Elden Ring that players haven't found yet. He didn't specify what it is, just that it exists, and the community hasn't discovered it after 2 years of data mining, theorizing, and testing every wall in the game. This could be an item, quest trigger, a lore detail, or just Miyazaki trolling the player base. Nobody knows. That's the secret. Reddit exploded with theories. Some think it's related to the dream mechanics referenced in cut content. Others believe it's a hidden ending tied to specific item combinations. The most popular theory involves the grace threads mentioned in item descriptions of golden strands that might connect to a broader puzzle nobody's solved. But after years of searching, the community's no closer to an answer. Miyazaki's undiscovered element has become Elden Ring's white whale, the thing everyone's looking for but nobody can find. This is From Software's ultimate secret item. It doesn't exist in any inventory or questline. It exists in the space between what's confirmed and what's possible. Miyazaki dangled the idea of an undiscovered secret, and the community's been chasing it ever since. Maybe it's a real item, maybe it's a joke. Either way, it's the perfect encapsulation of Elden Ring's design philosophy. If you think you found everything, you're wrong. There's always one more thing hiding just out of reach, an undiscovered element that might not even exist. That's FromSoft's endgame making you question if you've missed something that was never there. But whether it's real or not, one thing's certain. From daggers hidden behind invisible walls to shields that require solving paintings most players forget about, these are the most secret items in Elden Ring that will change how you play the game. Golden Scarab. This talisman boosts your rune acquisition by 20%, which sounds boring until you realize it's the difference between grinding for 3 hours or 1 hour to level up in late game. The Golden Scarab lives in the abandoned cave in Caelid, which is already a red flag because Caelid is where Joy goes to die. Getting this thing requires you to defeat 2 clean rot knights, at the same time in a cramped cave where your camera has a personal vendetta against you. These knights hit like trucks, inflict scarlet rot, and love to combo you into oblivion while their buddy backstabs you from across the room. It's peak From Software design, putting one of the most useful items in the game behind a fight that makes you question your life choices. But once you have it, every rune you earn gets that 20% bump, which means faster leveling, more smithing stones, and less time farming those albinorics on the cliff. The community calls this the rune farmer's best friend, and they're not wrong. Pair it with a gold pickled foul foot, and you're basically printing runes. This item has over 10 million views across farming guides, which tells you everything about how essential it is for anyone who doesn't want to spend their entire playthrough underleveled and crying. But rune farming was just the surface. What From Software hid next would make completionists question their sanity, and the community still debates if it was genius or cruelty. Silver Scarab. If the Golden Scarab is about getting more runes, the Silver Scarab is about getting more stuff. This talisman increases item discovery by 75 points, making rare drops actually drop instead of mocking you for 40 attempts. It's hidden in the hidden path to the Haligtree, which is already a nightmare location that requires you to navigate invisible bridges over a bottomless pit. The path to this thing involves walking on air, breaking illusory walls, and praying you don't accidentally roll off into the void because your depth perception failed you. From Software designed this area specifically to punish players who don't obsessively tap walls and inch forward like they're defusing a bomb. But the payoff is worth 75 item discovery means farming for rare armor sets, weapons, and materials becomes significantly less painful. You want that banished knight chest piece? Silver Scarab. Need a specific ash of war to drop? Silver Scarab. The community nicknamed this the Discovery Beetle because of its scarab design, and it's become essential for completionists who want every piece of gear without losing their sanity. The fact that it's hidden behind invisible walkways and secret walls is peak Souls logic. You can see why speedrunners memorize this path frame perfect, while casual players just look up the route and call it a day. Discovery mechanics were generous compared to what came next, because From Software was about to hide their best faith weapon behind something so random, you'd think they were trolling. Blade of Khala. Calling. This is a faith-scaling dagger that looks like the Black Knife weapons, but with golden holy energy instead of destined death. It's hidden in the Forbidden Lands, which you reach late game, and the acquisition method is so stupid it's almost genius. You have to ride an elevator down, then jump off mid-descent onto a hidden ledge that you'd never notice unless someone told you it existed. The Blade of Calling has the Blade of Gold skill, which launches a holy projectile that tracks enemies and deals solid damage for a dagger. It's perfect for faith builds that want a fast weapon with range options, and the weapon art scales with your incantation power. Lore-wise, this connects to Melina and the Black Knife assassins, fitting into the broader narrative about destined death and the Golden Order's secrets. The fact that From Software hid this behind a random elevator jump with no hints or clues is textbook Miyazaki. You either find it by accident, watch a guide, or miss it entirely across multiple playthroughs. But here's the thing, if faith builds needed a holy dagger this badly, why hide it in the most random spot in the game? Keep that question in mind, because the answer isn't what you think. That elevator trick was child's play. The DLC introduced something stranger, a weapon that doesn't just kill enemies, it erases them from reality entirely, and the way you find it proves From Software learned nothing about mercy. Cinquedea. This dagger boosts bestial incantations by 20%, which makes it essential for any faith build focusing on Gerank's beast spells. The Cinquedea is hidden behind the bestial sanctum in Dragon Barrow, Caelid, requiring you to jump down a series of routes and platforms that most players assume lead nowhere. The weapon scales to A in faith at max upgrade and has solid physical damage for a dagger. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, subscribe now. The 20% boost to beast incantations means spells like Stone of Gerank and Bestial Sling hit significantly harder, turning a niche build into something genuinely powerful. Visually, the dagger has claw-like engravings that match the Beastman aesthetic, tying it into the game's lore about Farum Azula and the Beast Priests. About 40% of faith players in the community use this weapon according to build trackers, which shows its importance for that playstyle. The acquisition method is pure From Software hiding essential gear behind jumps that look suicidal, but are actually safe if you trust the process. Casual players miss this entirely because who jumps off cliffs behind a building for fun? But that's the whole point. From Software wants you to explore every ledge, every corner, every suspicious gap in the world geometry. They weaponized curiosity itself. Beast builds got their toy. But what if I told you there's an item that makes one of the game's hardest bosses completely trivial? Most players never find it because From Software buried it behind a questline that punishes you for breathing wrong. Blasphemous Claw. This item is stupid good against Malekith and absolutely useless everywhere else, which makes it the ultimate situational secret. The Blasphemous Claw lets you parry Malekith's golden blade attacks, staggering him and opening him up for criticals. You get it by defeating Recusant Bernal when he invades you in crumbling Farum Azula, which only happens if you've progressed his questline correctly. The fight against Bernal is tough because he uses the Blasphemous Blade's weapon art, which heals him while damaging you. But once you kill him, you get this claw, and suddenly one of the game's hardest bosses becomes manageable. Parrying Malekith feels incredible because his attacks are so aggressive and overwhelming that turning them against him is pure satisfaction. The community calls this Malekith's Bane because it trivializes the fight if you learn the timing. About 25% of endgame players use this according to boss strategy polls, with most opting for the parry route instead of traditional dodging. The lore connection ties this item to Rykard and the Blasphemous Legacy, suggesting that certain weapons were designed specifically to counter the Golden Order's champions. From Software hid this behind an invasion that many players miss entirely because Bernal's quest is easy to screw up. You have to talk to him multiple times, progress specific areas, and then look for his invasion sign in Farum Azula. Miss any of those steps and you're fighting Malekith the hard way. Boss counters are one thing, but From Software also hid an entire weapon category behind fake walls, because apparently finding the boss wasn't hard enough. Crystal Spear. This sorcery lets you hurl a crystal spear projectile that pierces and explodes on impact. It's hidden in Celia Hideaway in Caelid, behind an illusory wall that you'd never find unless you were either incredibly thorough or following a guide. The crystal spear works great for intelligence builds that want a ranged option, piercing multiple foes with solid damage. The glowing blue aesthetic fits perfectly with crystal sorcery builds, and the weapon has decent scaling for a throwable. From Software loves hiding weapons like this in random caves behind fake walls, testing players' willingness to smack every surface in the game. The Celia Hideaway itself is easy to miss because it's tucked away in northern Caelid, and the illusory wall blends perfectly with the cave geometry. Players who do find it feel smart for about 10 seconds before realizing they probably missed 50 other secrets just like it. The question is, if intelligence builds needed a throwable weapon this specific, why not make it more obvious? Because From Software wanted to see who was paying attention. Harp Bow. This bow shoots arrows that emit musical notes on impact, which sounds gimmicky until you realize it's actually a solid weapon for dexterity ranged builds. You get the Harp Bow by solving the champion's song painting puzzle in Altus Plateau, which requires finding a painting, figuring out the location it depicts, and traveling there to claim the reward. The painting system in Elden Ring is a pure environmental storytelling. Each painting shows a specific vista, and you have to match it to a real location in the game world. The champion song painting depicts a spot in the mountaintops of the giants, and when you find it, the harp bow spawns there as a ghostly reward. The weapon itself has good dexterity scaling and decent damage, but the real appeal is the aesthetic. Firing musical arrows at enemies is just fun, and the sound design makes each shot feel unique. About 30% of dexterity players use this bow according to weapon popularity data, mostly for its novelty and solid performance. From Software hid this behind a puzzle that requires exploration, memory, and pattern recognition, skills that define the Souls experience. The painting system rewards players who actually look at the world instead of just sprinting through it, but painting puzzles were just the warm-up. What comes next is where From Software started hiding entire boss fights behind secrets. Paintings were just reconnaissance. The DLC took it further, hiding consumables that literally transform you into mythical creatures, and most players sprint right past them. Rockheart. This DLC consumable transforms you into a dragon, enhancing your breath attacks and giving you temporary draconic power. You get it by solving the Domain of Dragons painting in the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion, which requires finding the painting and then traveling to Jagged Peak to claim the reward. The Rockheart transformation lasts for a limited time, but significantly boosts Dragon Communion incantations, making spells like Dragonfire and Rotten Breath deal massive damage. The item ties into the DLC's expanded dragon lore, connecting to Baal and the ancient dragon war that predates the Erdtree. Visually, using the Rockheart gives your character a draconic appearance with glowing scales and enhanced breath effects. Only about 15% of DLC players have found this according to completion track, which makes it one of the rarer secrets. The Domain of Dragons painting is easy to miss because Jagged Peak is an optional area that many players skip or rush through. From Software designed this specifically for lore enthusiasts and completionists who want to experience every piece of the expansion's mythology. The transformation mechanic itself is unique to the DLC, showing how the developers expanded on existing dragon themes from the base game. The question is, if dragon builds needed this power boost, why lock it behind a painting puzzle in an optional area? Because From Software respects players who dig deep. Dragon transformations sound powerful, but what if you needed perfect defense instead? From Software hid that too, behind a puzzle most players start but never finish. Serpent Crest Shield. This shield blocks poison buildup and boosts fire resistance, making it perfect for areas like the Scarlet Rot swamps or fire giant fights. You get it by solving the incursion painting in Gravesite Plain, which is one of the DLC's painting puzzles that most players overlook. The Serpent Crest Shield has solid defensive stats and medium weight, fitting into most builds without over-encumbering your character. The poison immunity is clutch for Lake of Rot or Caelid Exploration, where rot buildup can drain your health faster than you can chug flasks. Fire resistance makes this useful against fire-based bosses and enemies, reducing chip damage from flame attacks. The serpent design connects to the DLC's expanded lore about ancient serpents and their connection to the Crucible. About 20% of DLC players use this shield according to equipment tracking, mostly for its utility in specific areas. The incursion painting is hidden in an early DLC zone, which means many players find the painting but forget to solve it before moving on. From Software placed this shield reward in a location that mirrors the painting's depiction, rewarding players who remember and return. But here's the thing, if defensive gear like this was so useful, why hide it behind a puzzle that most players forget about? Keep that in mind, because the answer shows how From Software tests player memory across 100-hour campaigns. Founding Rain of Stars. This sorcery creates a massive magical meteor shower that deals damage over a wide area, making it one of the most visually impressive spells in the game. You find it in a chest at the top of the Heretical Rise Tower in the mountaintops of the Giants, accessed by crossing an invisible bridge over a ravine, visible via white mist or at night, starting from the opposite side near the Snow Valley Ruins Overlook Site of Grace. The spell costs high FP, but deals significant damage to groups of enemies or slower bosses, with each meteor tracking independently. The founding name connects to the primeval sorceries and the study of glintstone magic from the stars. Visually, casting this spell looks like summoning an actual meteor storm, with golden blue projectiles raining down in a beautiful cascade. Intelligence builds use this for crowd control and boss damage, especially against large targets that can't dodge the spread. The fact that From Software hid this behind another invisible bridge puzzle, similar to the Silver Scarabs area, shows their commitment to testing player observation in frustrating areas. The community loves this spell for screenshots and boss fights, with guide views in the millions, but the real genius is how From Software made you earn it with no easy path, no obvious clues, just pure exploration and trust in the process. Meteor showers look incredible, but From Software saved their most sadistic secret for players who thought they'd seen everything. Spoiler, it involves wall abuse. Dagger Talisman. This talisman boosts critical hit damage by 17%, which makes it essential for builds focusing on ripostes, backstabs, or guard counters. It's hidden in a chest in Volcano Manor, which sounds simple until you realize you must drop down to a hidden ledge platform from the entrance area that most players miss. Access requires 2 stone sword keys to dispel the imp-sealed fog door near the Manor throne room. Head west upstairs before the waygate to audience pathway, then drop down platforms through caged rooms past enemies to reach the corpse with the talisman. The 17% crit boost is huge for PvP and PvE builds that rely on punishing enemy mistakes. Pair this with the misrecord dagger and you're basically one-shotting enemies off riposts. 50 hits was the warm-up. What From Software hid in the next room could delete entire boss health bars in one attack if you bothered to check the side rooms. Royal Knight's Resolve. This Ash of War boosts your next attack by 80%, which is absolutely broken for one-shot builds and boss strategies. You find it in Volcano Manor, specifically in a side room that most players miss because they're focused on the assassination questline. The 80% damage boost works on any weapon, making it perfect for colossal swords, great hammers, or charged spell setups. You pop the buff, wind up your heaviest attack, and delete health bars in a single hit. PvP players love this for ambush tactics, while PvE players use it to skip entire boss phases. The Royal Knight's Resolve synergizes with charged attacks and jump attacks, stacking multiplicatively with other damage buffs. The fact that it's sitting in a chest in Volcano Manor while most players are busy following Tanith's questline shows From Software's love of hiding power in plain sight. About 35% of strength builds use this Ash according to loadout data, making it one of the most popular offensive tools in the game. The name connects to the Knights of Leyndell and their dedication to overwhelming force, fitting the lore about the Royal Army's tactics. But here's where it gets interesting. If this Ash of War was so powerful, why place it in an optional manner that players can completely miss? Because From Software rewards exploration over linear progression. Damage buffs win fights. But what about just not dying? From Software hid that solution in an underground kingdom most players never knew existed, Prince of Death's Pustule. This talisman raises faith by 15 and boosts vitality, death blight resistance. It's hidden in a pit below Stormvale Castle. From Liftside Chamber Site of Grace, drop down the chasm carefully, defeat the ulcerated tree spirit, then loot the corpse next to the giant root-like face tied to Godwyn Sichosh Prince of Death lore. The 90 vitality boost makes this talisman essential for survival builds and PvP setups, where every HP point matters. About 40% of players miss Deep Root Depths entirely according to achievement tracking, which means they never get this talisman. From Software designed this area as a reward for thorough underground exploration, connecting it to Fia's questline and the Ranni path. The pustule design looks gross and thematic, fitting the Death Blight aesthetic. The community debates whether this or other vitality talismans are better, but the consensus is that 90 flat vitality is huge for low-level builds. Survival gear keeps you alive, but the DLC introduced something weird, an item that controls time itself. Sort of. And it only works on NPCs, which raises some disturbing questions about From Software's NPC philosophy. Thiolier's Concoction. This DLC item puts NPCs to sleep for 24 hours in-game time, which has specific uses in questlines and NPC interactions. You get it from Thiolier's quest in Shadow of the Erdtree, which requires following his storyline and making specific dialogue choices. The concoction works on certain NPCs, allowing you to manipulate quest outcomes or access areas that would otherwise be blocked. It's a niche item, but essential for completionists who want every quest ending and dialogue option. The 24-hour sleep duration means you have to manage in-game time carefully, resting at sites of grace to advance the clock. Thiolier's character ties into the DLC's poison and sleep themes, connecting to Saint Trina's expanded lore. Only about 10% of DLC players complete his full questline according to tracking data, which makes this concoction one of the rarer finds. From Software loves putting quest-critical items behind NPC interactions that are easy to mess up, requiring precise timing and dialogue choices. The concoction's existence shows how the DLC expanded on manipulation mechanics beyond combat, but niche quest items were just the setup. What comes next is where From Software started hiding entire gameplay mechanics behind secrets that most players never discover. Quest manipulation seemed harmless, until you realize From Software designed an entire hidden system around player memory, environmental awareness, and trust. Every secret we covered wasn't just hidden, it was testing something specific about how you play. The Golden Scarab tested your patience, the Silver Scarab tested your thoroughness, the Blade of Calling tested your willingness to jump into the void. And that pattern? It's deliberate. From Software isn't just hiding items, they're profiling players, sorting the explorers from the rushers, the wall smackers from the guide followers. The real question isn't why these items are hidden, it's what From Software learns about you when you find them. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every secret law in Dark Souls explained, click the video on the screen.